maximizing your credit worthiness will prove to be more important or even more valuable than ever before in the coming years. Okay, so one thing I want everybody to keep in mind is that guidelines for underwriting are always changing. So even if you keep a decent score or a good credit score, it might not be good enough, and products come and go. One bank might offer something right now that they won't be providing tomorrow. And the process to qualify for those tools changes regularly. Things will become tighter as time goes on. And that's why it's so important to not just put yourself in the strongest borrowing position that you can put yourself into, but to get access to the tools now when you need it the least, even before you potentially know what it'll be used for, in order to avoid missing out on having that tool, because that tool could not only literally change your life, but you might be approved for it today and not be able to get it tomorrow because the underwriting guidelines have switched. So what I'd love to show what the debt weapon cheat sheet looks like. And I apologize for the background noise, everybody. If you can hear that, there's a lot of construction going on in this building. Progress has not stopped yet, so that's a good sign. This is a guide that I'm willing to give away to everybody. Like I said, this is the very first time we've ever done it. It's a simple PDF document. There's some guide instructions right here on the top that will teach you exactly how to go about starting to search for these various tools. One thing I've always tried to do inside our coaching is help people understand how to identify a great hole to fish in, a great body of water to fish in, versus providing them this or that great pool of water. Because you never know when that body of water or that fishing hole is going to be dried up and all those fish are long gone. It does you no good, at least no long-term good, for me to go out there and do all the research. What I want to show you is how you can do the research yourself, and this will actually give you the step-by-step directions to do that. You can go ahead and click the link in the description to gain access to this. Throw your email in there. This is totally free of charge. But down below, what you'll find is the actual questions that you'll need to be asking each and every institution that you reach out to in order to find whether or not an application for you makes sense. And the entire purpose of doing this in advance of submitting an application is to avoid having your credit pulled where a hard inquiry is added to your report only to lead to a declination. And as I'd mentioned before, loans will be declined. You might only increase your odds of approval from 50% to 65%. That's a rough estimate of what we think we see happening when people do their vetting like this. But going through and actually shopping several banks before giving permission to run credit and submitting the formal application allows you to lay the comparing loans side by side and really determine for yourself the differences between this home equity line of credit or that home equity line of credit provided by this bank or that bank, because the rates and terms will have some variations. And this will give you every single detail that you could possibly need that you can just go ahead and fill in. So I would just complete one of these for each bank. I would save this as its own separate worksheet that I would actually create for that perhaps specific institution. So if in the case of me applying for an Ent Credit Union home equity line of credit, I maybe would have one for Pentagon Federal Credit Union and have that laid side by side. So I would have one of these completed for each bank or institution that I contact, and it should become fairly obvious to you by the end which debt weapon of that specific type makes the best sense for you. So this is every question that we can think of. There may be some additional details that come in that you maybe would just want to jot down on the notes. And one thing I find, and this is also indicated in the directions here on the first couple pages, is that a lot of these answers can be found directly through the website. So going in and sort of filling this out to the best of your ability prior to getting on the phone and making a phone call can make a lot of sense. But eventually you will probably want to speak to an actual banker, or even going into the branch to do so can oftentimes, I think, establish a little bit more of that old-fashioned bank to borrower credibility and relationship, that rapport. Do I really think it's gaining you some sort of a preferential treatment and your likelihood of approval goes up by doing that? Probably not. I mean, that would be wishful thinking. But you know, in some cases, I do think that some of the smaller, mid-size and credit union type of relationships, you know, I have a banking relationship in the small town I live in Colorado, it's called Collegiate Peaks Banks. It's tiny, 2,500 people in town. So we walk in and we have beers with those guys now and then. So we do have a little bit more of a rapport, and I think that at least you can have a little more direct communication about what it's going to take to get to the closing table before you submit the application. Worst case scenario is not that bad. Worst case scenario is you apply for the tool, you get declined, you end up with an inquiry, your credit score maybe gets hit slightly. Usually it's between 2 to 25 points for those inquiries, depending on how much depth there is and how good your credit is now. So 25 points would be rather severe, but more often than not, it's closer to the 2 point side. So not a big deal if you do apply and you're not approved, but we want to try and avoid that as much as possible, especially since we want to have applications being submitted on a regular basis, not frequent, but consistent. So a couple to few times per year, anywhere between 2 to 8 per year is what we would recommend. So that can be fairly aggressive depending on how many inquiries are already on your report and what you're trying to accomplish. You have 8 new inquiries show up on your credit report within 1 year. That can not only have an effect on your scores, but also raise eyebrows in underwriting where banks are going to say, hey, what is it you're applying for? Were you approved? Do you have other debts we can't see? Explain this. And they may ask for a letter of explanation or at least some sort of an explanation on each and every inquiry. Only the 10 most recent inquiries affect your credit within 1 year, 12 months. Okay? So we'll give this out to everybody. This is a really valuable tool. It's the first time we've ever done this in years and years and years of having this available for our coaching members. But I do think that this would help people with the imminent crash coming on the horizon here. The more that we can be a resource of resources for people, the better. Continue to stay tuned into the channel. We're going to continue to have as much new content as possible as the times continue to change and how it relates to these extremely powerful tools and how they may be able to serve you, not just to survive this really difficult upcoming market crash, but to thrive during it as well. This could end up proving to be the one or the two tools that end up building you your largest amount of wealth so far. So we're looking forward to seeing you on the next video. Make it a great day and keep on cash flowing. Take care.